Hi, I'm Jim Shaw, the publisher of Colonial Times Magazine here in Lexington and chairman of the board of LexMedia here in Lexington as well. It's my pleasure to be with Representative Katherine Clark, the congresswoman who represents the Massachusetts District Number 5. Katherine is has been in Congress now since 2013 and is the vice chair of the Democratic Caucus and on the subcommittees for Health and Human Services, Education, and also Transportation and Urban Development, among other things. And I know that I looked at your list of caucuses that you are associated with, and it's quite extensive. So let me welcome you and say thank you at the outset for everything you're doing here. Your hard work is not going unnoticed here. We're proud to have you on the national stage. I know that since 2013, you've risen quite well in the ranks of the United States Congress, and your leadership is much appreciated. So welcome here with us today, Katherine.
Oh, Jim, it is good to be with you. And I just want to thank you for helping people in Lexington and your other viewers get information. We know that it is very difficult to take in bills of the length and complexity. And I really appreciate the opportunity to help people get some information on how they can access benefits that Congress just passed on.
Yep. Well, there's a lot to it. I know this bill is one of the, is it the third piece of legislation that's come out of Congress so far? Or I know it's the biggest.
That's right. That's right. It's the third piece. And what we tried to do with this particular bill is focus on healthcare workers, continuing to get them what they need, and our states and municipalities, but with a real focus on the workers and how families are having to deal with a new economic reality where they may have lost jobs, had hours cut, had to shutter small business. And we want to make sure that they are able to provide the basic necessities for their families, have their business like this. And as we see infection rates begin to drop in the future, that they'll be able to reopen and have what they need to make sure that their businesses can be successful.
Right. Well, let me ask you then, sort of before we get into the weeds of the CARES Act, is there any, and this is kind of an unfair question, but is there any end in sight? I mean, are we starting to flatten the curve at all? Are we seeing it? I've seen models that say sometime in mid-May or something like that. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, the epidemiologists are telling us that here in Massachusetts, we could even see sort of the surge begin in the next few weeks. And, we've seen states like Virginia now extend their shelter in place to June 10th. We may see more of that. And what I want to tell people who are watching is that staying at home, maybe you begin to feel like you see a death count rising, you see case numbers rising. Is this really working? It really is. It is the number one thing we can do to help protect our families, our loved ones, and our communities. And we are going to see more cases. Massachusetts is now testing about 4,000 people a day, and that is a huge jump, and we are going to see more confirmed cases as we do more testing. But that will also help us isolate who has been infected with coronavirus and help them self-isolate and quarantine so that we can further reduce the spread of this virus. But this is what we have to do to be good citizens, to save lives, and it's difficult. And I think we're going to see, it's going to appear like things are getting much worse, but we are already helping, and we have to stay with it. Well,
from your mouth to God's ears, for sure. let's say, let's talk about the CARES Act. You know, the CARES Act, I know this most recent piece of legislation was really a huge undertaking. I know the House had started some time ago sort of discussing the tenets of this legislation under their own bill, and then the Senate in mid-March sort of moved forward with a piece of legislation. And then together you guys sort of worked out and roughed out the edges to come up with a final product that the president signed, I believe just last week, or I think it was Friday or so. I can't remember exactly what day.
On Friday.
Yeah. So, and I know it's, you know, people have heard that it's coming. They're very anxious. They're sort of sitting on the edge of their chairs because they really need this support. So, you know, it's, I guess the first question is, you know, what exactly does the CARES Act offer to individuals? I know it's got healthcare assistance in there. It's got small business assistance. So it's a little bit all encompassing. So can you break it down just a little bit for me, and then we can maybe go subject to subject?
Sure. So overall, it is making an investment in our healthcare system. It's going to be $200 billion investment in hospitals, health systems, and health research. We want to continue to fund a vaccine that could be effective treatments, continue to research how this virus is transmitted, and everything we can do to stop that transmission and lower our infection rates. There's also about $150 billion that will go directly to states and municipalities to help them with the incredible cost burden that they are taking on. We know that for many states, while extending the tax deadline is good for Americans and Bay Staters, as we look at dwindling bank accounts and pressing bills, it is also hard for states. They need help from the federal government to balance their budgets. Out of that $150 billion, Massachusetts right now is scheduled to get just under $3 billion for their share to help offset the costs. And then we really look at things that can support people who have been affected economically. There is a big focus on two primary areas. One is unemployment benefits. And what we have done is two major things. We have extended it and expanded the eligibility of unemployment to include people who wouldn't usually be eligible. That means sole proprietors. That means people who work on contract, people who we think of as part of the gig economy. Anyone who files a 1099 will be included and be able to get unemployment benefits. And then the federal government added $600 a week that will be paid by the federal government for every worker to try and get people as close as we can to their full income. So if you already qualify for unemployment, if you're in a typical employer-employee situation where you already are eligible for unemployment insurance, you should apply. You will be able to get these expanded benefits, but don't wait. If you are in this new category of self-employed, contract workers, the governor has asked that you wait until we get the technical points and rules from the federal government so the states know how to set up these new programs.
Do we know how long that'll take? We don't.
Well, we're pushing them to do it as quickly as possible. We certainly hope it'll be done in the next few weeks, if not earlier. But we will be sure to be working in coordination with the state to let people know. But if you log on now, the system won't be able to find you yet and get you the benefits we need. And we're seeing such an increase in people filing that the governor has asked that people wait, and we will be working in coordination to get that information to people as soon as we get it from.
Will those gig workers be eligible for both the regular unemployment and the additional benefit, or just one? Both. Okay.
They will be eligible for both.
Great.
And And the other focus really is going to be on the small business and mid-sized business owners, people who are running businesses with under 500 employees. That also includes nonprofits. And it is going to be a mixture of grants and loans. If you have an existing SBA loan, your payments on that loan are going to be deferred. If you will be able to qualify for new SBA loans, a new product line that will be put in place that will be primarily refundable if you keep the same number of employees on when you take out the loan as when the loan is due. And so it is a way to get relief, a low interest loan, but also make sure that that loan will not add to your debt as our businesses are reemerging if you're able to keep people working. And that's really the focus that we brought to this bill, and the changes we demanded in the Senate version was to keep the focus on the American people, keep the focus on our Main Street businesses. We also realized that for some people, the relief has to come fast. Right. So there'll also be a loan program that will be able to be used for operational costs, be able to use for payroll, up to $10,000, and that will just be a grant. There will be no repayment, no interest.
And who qualifies for that?
Again, it'll be businesses under 500.
Okay, so the same, basically, if you qualify for the loan programs, you should also apply for this as well.
Yeah.
And this is so. Someone will look at this. Is this all through the SBA? Someone will look at these applications and then deem and sort of help you build a package of support. Is that how that works?
That's right. The SBA will be administering these, and through also working with their 2,000 partners in different lending institutions around the country. This is going to be a big adjustment for the SBA. We gave them a significant increase, so they're going to be able to hire and meet the demand that we know is going to be there around the country, and certainly here in Massachusetts, because I can tell you every day I hear from neighbors who run a small yoga studio, have a children's clothing store, and are really concerned about their employees and themselves, how they provide for their families and protect their businesses while we are trying to stay home and make sure that this virus does not continue to infect our neighbors and communities.
Right. Well, I can concur. I see it every day in my business in publishing. 95% of all of my advertising base are small companies here in the Lexington area. So, I'm working with each one of them to sort of work them through, to help deal with how it affects them, while also trying my best to sort of hedge so that, we're celebrating our 25th year publishing here in Lexington. And it's great. Really, it's kind of a mixed blessing. It's very exciting. In January, I was very excited. Now I'm very concerned, like every other small business. But I'm doing my best, just to sort of keep my focus on sort of presenting the, and helping the people in the community, presenting the facts and supporting these businesses that have been supporting me for 25 years. So, that's one of the reasons I'm really interested in finding out more about this piece of legislation. So now there is another component, the direct payments to families or to Americans, like the people will be expecting a check in the mail, or if they file electronically, a direct payment electronically. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. The direct payments will vary a little bit by income. You are also eligible for these if you did not have any income. We'll be looking back at income levels from, if you already filed 2019, we'll use that. If not, it will go off the 2018 income tax filing. And it's basically $1,200 for an adult, and $500 per child would go to the household. with some variations as you start to get into income over $75,000, the payment decreases. But it is going to be moved electronically, we hope, as much as possible so that people don't have to wait for checks. The original goal for the administration was April 6th to have these checks out, and we are working with the administration to make sure that they get to Americans as quickly as possible and electronically wherever possible.
Are there going to be any barriers to people receiving this? Like, for instance, if let's say you're a green card holder in this country and you are working and you file taxes, that shouldn't be a problem?
As long as you have a social security number, you will qualify.
Okay, good. I'm looking at critical funding for childcare and early learning programs. I know people are dealing with childcare issues, and I'm glad that you pointed it out in the material that you that you sent out and is available to the folks who are sort of receiving your periodic updates. So, can you talk a little about the childcare component?
Yeah, we know that childcare is really the backbone of our economy for so many families. And we have seen childcare providers also fall into this group that aren't usually able to collect unemployment insurance, and also run small businesses that have had to close in response to this virus. So we wanted to make sure that not only were we making a key investment in childcare, which I see as a key part of our country's infrastructure, but also make sure that they are able to operate and afford the extra precautions for those childcare providers who are staying open to help our frontline healthcare workers, all the people who are still going to work to keep our communities fed and able to receive health care. So I asked for $21 billion. This bill came in at $4 billion. We're going to continue to push for childcare, and we will see. We don't know exactly what proportion Massachusetts will receive out of that $4 billion, but it is an issue that we are going to be pushing and requesting from the House version of the bill as we go forward and putting together the fourth package that we know we're going to need.
And you're working on the fourth part of this bill, this initiative now?
Yes, there are some that we know now that we want more funding, like childcare, like funding for the elections. We feel states are going to need funding to move to a mail-in program. Some states already have it, many don't. And we want to make sure that our democracy and elections in the fall are protected and that people are able to access the ballot. We want to make sure that we are doing more with food benefits. So many of our children, 1 out of every 12 children in Massachusetts suffers from food insecurity. And we want to make sure that as schools close, Massachusetts is doing a really excellent job of getting those meals to kids who are used to receiving at least 2 meals a day at school. But it's not a perfect system, and we want to make sure that our seniors, our children, people who need help covering the costs of food in this crisis have it. So that's another area where we already know we're going to be looking for assistance from the federal government. But we also, are keeping open minds and seeing how this first aid to small businesses with unemployment insurance plays out, and what are the developing needs that we need to address, fine-tune, and add more money into. At this point, I don't see the need for more money for our frontline healthcare workers with protective equipment. see that we are going to need more ventilators to help treat patients who are in crisis and very sick with this virus. And we're keeping an eye on all of that as we move forward.
Can I, on the topic of ventilators in hospitals, we do have a sort of a resident question that I wanted to throw out to you about. It came in just this morning. How have the 6 hospitals in the district, presumably your district, of 750,000, how have they expanded bed service to meet the unexpected surge in cases, the COVID cases? Is that something you can speak to?
In general terms, I can. I spoke to the National Guard, who's working very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that we have swing space available. We have moved many of the patients who are not sick with coronavirus to a hospital in Worcester. The Baptist Hospital that does many orthopedic surgeries is being converted to a hospital that can see people that have other non-coronavirus related hospitalizations during this time. And we are looking at expanding with tents, with converting other types of hospital space to make sure that we are able to handle a surge. Right now, we're holding our own with ICUs and hospital, but we are going through almost 4 million masks a month, which is, just highlights the need for the federal government to really get a handle on a needs-based assessment for states and a transparent system for allocating these life-saving personal protection equipment for our healthcare workers. So we can certainly look to put out more information if people are interested on the specifics of how the plans for hospitals and developing surplus space if needed is going. But I do want people to know that those plans are underway. The funding, the construction, is being planned and thought about at this time.
Great. I have a couple of other questions relative to the legislation, but I do want to ask, and I know this is not something that you've been very good about sort of staying above the fray, politically speaking, and keeping focused on the need to get this legislation out and help people. But I can't help but mention, watching our president when he sort of politicizes, who gets what. He's engaged in this awful situation with the governor of Washington State. And of course, a great deal of money is going to the president sort of with unfettered access. And I know there's a great deal of concern by members of the House like yourself that those funds that he is able to administer will get to the right people. I know that you guys have worked hard to try to create some limits so that certain, industries can't, buy back stock, give bonuses to executives and all of that. Maybe you can just speak briefly to that. And then I want to ask you about student support for students after that.
Sure. One of the things we really fought with the Senate and were successful on was putting some guardrails around the $500 billion that the Senate planning to send to private industry. We all agree that our airlines need help, but we wanted the focus to remain on the employees. Right. Over 1.2 million people work in the airline industry across the country. This is a significant workforce and is really in many ways a privately run public utility. And so we are willing and understand the need to help the airline industry, but it had to come with some protections for taxpayers and for workers. Right. So we are glad that we were able to put in that this money just wouldn't go into a fund that would be administered solely by the Secretary of the Treasury, and by the administration, but we will have an oversight board that is going to make sure that this money is not used for stock buybacks, executive compensation, that collective bargaining agreements are kept in place, that, that if you accept public money, if you accept taxpayer money, that you are working to get your airline, protect your employees, and make sure that when we are through this, that we are able to get back in the air and have this vital link to our economy be reestablished. But we saw as the president signed the bill on Friday, he tried to carve himself back out, but
Right.
take himself out of our constitutional obligation and responsibility to provide oversight, and we are committed to doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was pleased, not being fully apprised of every aspect of the bill. I did see an interview with the president of the Flight Attendants Union, and she was very, very happy about the outcome of this legislation. I know that she was up there working shoulder to shoulder with folks like you who were out there protecting these workers, making sure that the money does get to the right place. I remember, years ago, there was a stimulus package or a stimulus bill where, it's sort of based on supply side economics and the old trickle down theory, but it never trickles down to the people who need it. So thank you for your diligence on that, and also your colleagues in the House. Another big component of this, and I know this is something that's near and dear to you, and even before the coronavirus situation, I know that you have taken a very public posture in support of students and student debt. And so I was really pleased to see, that student debt is part of this package, because these young folks are just getting started and in the middle of a crisis, on top of that, saddled with enormous debt. So, what, if you can speak to a little bit about what's in here for students and student debt relief?
Yeah, so there's $30 billion that is going not only to helping students with student loans, forbearance programs for them, but also helping we know in my district is going to need support, and that's colleges and universities who are also struggling with a severe loss of revenue in all of this. So we want to make sure that our schools, our institutions of higher learning, and especially our students are able to ride out the loss of income. So for students, it came in many different ways. We're trying to replace some of that work study since they are just not able to do that, and make sure that they have that income and still qualify for all their loans and grants, even if they can't have the work study. There's forgiveness on some student loans for the near future coming from the federal government, so that they have a chance to put those loans off until everybody can get back on their feet. So we are happy to provide more details for students on exactly, but please check. If you have a student loan and you're worried about it, if you're part of a work study program and you're worried about it, we ask that you check in with our office. Check in with our office, please, if you have a question.
Okay.
Business owner or anything that we can be helpful with. We have a lot of detailed information that I think will be very helpful to people in Lexington.
Well, look, you've given me more than enough time. You've been very generous here. I know you've been extremely busy, and we do appreciate it. I just want to close by saying, I do receive your periodic emails, sort of updates. The one I got yesterday was incredibly informative. If somebody wants to do that, can they just contact your congressional office? At the end of the interview, we'll put up a sort of a notification of where people can get further information. But can they get that from your congressional office and get on that list so they can get those email updates?
Absolutely. If you go to my website, which is just Katherine Clark, you can get lots of updated information. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Rep K Clark, and we're on Facebook too. Our offices are closed, but very, very active. We will return your call. We will get your email, and we will get back to you. And don't hesitate. It's what we're here for. We know this is a high anxiety time for many people, and it's confusing. And these benefits are going to be very, very helpful to families facing financial stress right now. But we know that how you access them can be confusing, and we want to be able to provide clarity and answers.
Great. Well, I saw your speech, your recent speech on the floor about making sure we keep in the forefront of our minds postal workers and other service workers that are out there on the front line every day.
That's right.
I'd like to say, for the record, and I know you feel this way every day, the legislative assistants that work with you, your congressional staff, and I have to say you've got among the best. They've been very, very helpful with me and helpful with others. So you're very fortunate in that regard as well. Katherine, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you and your family all the best. I want you to be safe, and thank you for everything you're doing in Washington. It really does make a difference, and it's much appreciated.
Oh, Jim, thank you so much. Be well.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone out there is, and thank you for the shout out to my staff. They really do an exemplary job and care deeply about the people of this district.
They do. All right. Thank you, Katherine.
Thank you.